Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Phillips, president of Americans for Prosperity. Thank you for joining us once again for these series of Facebook discussions with key leaders around the country. And, we've been talking so much about these threats coming out of Washington, D.C., the policy threats, the big spending, the Green New Deal, the Bernie Sanders takeover of healthcare. It feels like we're on defense there, and it can be frustrating. And we're working to stop this $3.5 trillion boondoggle the left is pushing out of Washington. But there's good news. Out in the states where we have good leadership, we're actually seeing a renaissance of policies that bring freedom to individuals and also the prosperity that we know is so attendant with that freedom. And I don't think there's anywhere in the country doing it quite like Arizona. So to kick off this discussion today is our state director for Americans for Prosperity in Arizona, Stephen Shattuck. Stephen, take it away.
Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate it. And you're right. We have a lot of big national battles that we're taking on every day here in Arizona to try to impact kind of the future of this country. But fortunately, we've been blessed to be led by a kind of fearless governor, a governor here in Arizona who we just recently had one of the most successful legislative sessions that we've had in the history of the state. And actually, I think it was the third longest session in the history of the state. So with that, I do want to introduce Governor Doug Ducey. Governor Ducey, what do you think, to kind of catch up our viewers here, a lot of the success was built around income tax reform. That really stemmed from a Proposition 208, which was passed last election cycle. And just recently, the Arizona Supreme Court came back with a ruling. How do you think that ruling from the Supreme Court will affect the flat tax in Arizona moving forward?
So first, I want to say thank you to you, Stephen. Thanks to Tim Phillips and AFP. It has just been terrific in this battle that we've had. We do prefer in Arizona to stay on offense. We're running on what we campaigned on. I mean, that's what the state of the state is an extension of, is what the campaign was about. I ran on getting income taxes as close to zero as possible. We've been able to simplify and improve our tax code each of the 6 years I've been in office, but this last year was really beyond expectation in what we could accomplish. And part of it's because of what AFP did in partnership. And the other part of it is what the left did during the election cycle in 2020. Out of state forces, and Tim mentioned that it was among the longest sessions that we've had in Arizona state history, and that's true. I'll refresh your memory that our first session was the shortest session in state history, and that's because we inherited a $1 billion deficit in a budget that wasn't balanced. So it's a lot easier session when you just say no to everybody, you tighten your belt, you make the appropriate cuts, and you get the state fiscally sound and responsible. And we've been growing every session since. But in 2020, the left came and really, I think, attempted to deceive the voters. They told them that there was going to be a 3.5% surcharge and that no one in the state would have to pay it except the highest earners, which was the top 1%. And that limped over the finish line at 51%. So with that, it would have taken our top rate from 4.5% to 8%. That's a 77% increase. That's not a 3.5% increase. And it takes Arizona from a top 10 competitive state to the equivalent of Washington, D.C., New York State, or Bernie Sanders, Vermont. So with that getting over, we, of course, prosecuted the case constitutionally with our Supreme Court, and that's the ruling that you're referring to, Stephen. But you can't depend on the court. You can't shove in all your stakes with the court. So we also want to work to fix this legislatively. So what we passed in the legislature was that Arizona would have the lowest flat tax in the nation at 2.5%, and we were successful at passing that. We were also able to cut out the cancer of what would have been 208 making our state uncompetitive by having our highest marginal tax rate at 4.5%. So we basically fixed and improved the state better than it was before November of 2020. With the Supreme Court ruling and the words in the opinion calling 208 unconstitutional, the opinion saying that it is hanging by a thread, and the fact that it's going to go to the Superior Court to talk about some different funding levels, it will likely be struck down in its entirety, leaving Arizona in a position where we have a 2.5% flat tax across the board. That's the lowest flat tax in the nation and improves Arizona's competitiveness going forward. It's a real turn of events that'll be very positive for our state's economy, our citizens, our job creators, and everybody that's working for a living.
Yeah, and Governor Ducey, we were talking about this when I was in Arizona last, that the country is, people are mobile. They can vote with their feet to go retire somewhere or to move a business. A lot of businesses have moved to Arizona, but this tax reform, which is so fair, a flat rate, it's going to make Arizona even more attractive beyond just the great weather, the great natural resources, the people. It pushes Arizona to a level of competitiveness that is a good thing. Can you talk about that for a minute? Because that's important for folks to hear and understand.
Sure, it's a force multiplier. I mean, we knew we were in for a boom year. I would say we're in for boom decades with a 2.5% flat tax across the board. And you're right, a flat tax is seen as fair. It's very tough for outsiders or electeds or legislators to mess with it because everybody is at the same tax rate. And Arizona was among the leading states in the nation before we had this tax reform. I mean, we were winning the biggest competitive economic victories with Intel and Lucid, Nikola, Taiwan Semi, all before this tax decrease. And Americans do vote with their feet. I mean, we're seeing that in California right now with an exodus from that state. The fact that they're lost in the state of California, they lost through the census a congressional seat. I mean, Ronald Reagan said that if the Pilgrims had found America on the West Coast, they would have never bothered to discover the rest of the country. Nobody leaves California because they want to leave. It's through this bad leadership, bad policies, and lack of a feeling of safety and quality of life in your neighborhood that people are saying, I'm going to look elsewhere. And Arizona and Texas have really won the bounty of those people that are fleeing. I think that's going to continue. And of course, I think income taxes are a real driver. I don't want to tax people's success. I don't think that's the right way to do it. That's why I want to get it as close to zero as possible. There are some states out there that are at zero. But I want to say, when you take Arizona's competitiveness across the board, meaning our income tax, our sales tax, and our property tax, we're the most attractive state in the nation today. And of that, I'm very proud. We're going to maintain that and continue to accelerate it.
Stephen, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Governor, obviously this session was very successful, but priority because the tax fight, but there was so much more that we were able to accomplish this year, one of which was telehealth. And quite frankly, I'm sure you would agree that this is probably one of the model telehealth bills that we were able to pass in Arizona. Can you tell viewers kind of why this bill is so significant and why it really is a model bill for other states to replicate?
Thank you very much, Stephen. And you're right. The past 18 months have been tough on everyone. Of course, we've been dealing with COVID-19 and how we can mitigate it, how we can get a solution out there. And we have that solution today in the vaccine and people's personal vigilance. But there were several things that were discoveries that we knew about and we were able to accelerate through the pandemic. And one of them was telehealth expansion, this idea that you can get on your phone, you can go to your primary care physician, you can get a diagnosis, and you can avoid the hassle and the pain of having to go into the doctor's office. If you're sick, having to leave your home. And we'd really like to follow on with that, with how we handle prescription drugs as well, because let's say you're sick or you have the flu and you need to just be prescribed some antibiotics for that or some other common malady. You can do that through telehealth. And we'd like to make it in a way where you'd never even have to leave your home. So one, you can take care of yourself and not spread any sickness anywhere else. So that was something we were able to get through the legislature. And it's something I think that our citizens really came to appreciate with the ease, comfort, and convenience of the policy.
Yeah. Another issue, we talked about the tax cuts and tax reform in Arizona, making you a national leader, certainly with this flat tax approach, which is so fair for folks across every income bracket. We've talked about telemedicine and healthcare reform. There's another area that I'm seeing around the country, and I think it's such a big moment. And I know you did some work on this in Arizona, and that's education reform. Parents are seeing firsthand how their children are educated or sometimes not educated very well with a lot of the stay-at-home measures and such. Can you talk to us a little bit about the kind of reform on education that you wanted to see in Arizona for parents and grandparents and children, and then what you were able to get accomplished in this area?
I think the biggest opportunity that we have, I'm speaking from a partisan perspective here because this does seem to be separated from Republican to Democrat, is that we embrace school choice in Arizona. We embrace parental choice. We're leading the country today on school choice with 500 schools of choice out there. Charter schools, which are public schools, but allow for private management. Those schools are educating nearly 200,000 Arizona children. 23% of our kids, if you take those schools, that's the #1 state in the nation for educational and academic performance. So this choice really works, and raising the bar really works. So we embrace that along with things like educational savings accounts. This is basically where a parent gets their taxpayer dollars and can make the best decision for their child. We know that kids learn in different ways, and we want to let 1,000 flowers bloom here in Arizona with not only charter schools, but there's educational entrepreneurs that are out there putting things together like micropods or bringing in tutors to help these kids. And we were just talking about telehealth. One of the great stories around the telehealth expansion was we had an autistic kid, severely autistic and sick child in Tucson. And we've got a great hospital in Phoenix Children's Hospital. And his mom talked about how tough it was to take him while he was sick in the car from Phoenix to Tucson, which is about a 90-minute drive. And with telehealth, they're able to see the best doctors in the world in the comfort of their home and find out how they can help their child. That's the same with education. I mean, we've had parents that are moving here from across the country because in some of these schools of choice, they are focused on autistic kids. That's all of the children that go to those schools. So the kids feel very comfortable in the schools. The educators understand how to deal with the issues that these young people have, and the parents are highly involved. So you can take that across the spectrum of kids. And we've got a couple examples here, like the Basis school system has been called the best school in the world by Amanda Ripley when she wrote the book, The Smartest Kids in the World. We've got another school, Great Hearts Academy. It's got an 11,000 kid wait list. So just like Americans vote with their feet, parents are very good consumers of what's best for their child. And as bad as the pandemic was, and as much as it hurt our children, I do think our parents were able to see what their kids are learning, the level of rigor and expectation that has happened. And you also saw a real dramatic difference between red states and blue states in how we handled this. We wanted to keep our schools open. We want our teachers in the front of the classroom, our kids in the seat, and we want those kids learning. There's only a bit of CDC guidance that we absolutely pushed back on or adjusted. Of course, we focused on the most vulnerable, but we immediately, after that 75-year-old age bracket had the vaccination, we prioritized teachers because we wanted to put them back in the classroom. We knew it was the safest place for kids, and these kids have to get caught up, but our parents should have a choice in the system, and they should have stewardship over their taxpayer dollars in making that happen.
So, Governor, one of the things that you talked about through the education forum and telehealth is, Arizona is such a diverse state. And while Maricopa does make up a large portion of the population, as you've had to encounter, we have very rural areas of our state and very wonderful, beautiful areas of our state. This year, you passed a bill that would expand individuals' property rights and allow them to have broadband cell towers on their private property. Can you tell viewers why that bill is so essential and why other states should look at it as a model to follow?
Sure, Stephen. Thank you for pointing that out. I mean, broadband today is the equivalent of electricity in yesteryear. This is what levels the playing field. And while there is a lot of focus on Maricopa County and Greater Phoenix and Greater Tucson, of course, we respect our people that live in the rural parts of the state and our Native American parts of the state. Arizona has 22 tribes here, and the leveler on the playing field, not only for education, but for economic innovation and development is through broadband, through the internet, and through the digital age. So what we wanted to do is give individuals the flexibility around that. We, of course, wanted to use state dollars to accelerate that as well. And as disappointed as I am in the lack of focus in our Congress on this infrastructure package, because I do think there is opportunity around infrastructure that could be nonpartisan, I would include broadband in that umbrella category of roads, bridges, ports, and airports. I think it makes a real difference for our citizens. I think we're doing everything we can at the state level to provide that option and opportunity for our citizens. And I encourage other governors across the country to take the bill, cross out Arizona, insert your state name, and get it to your legislature.
Governor Ducey, I want to go back to the tax reform and tax cuts for just a minute. Because you mentioned something that's important. It's good to have bipartisan legislation, but on that tax bill, the Democrats chose to just uniformly oppose. You have a very narrow Republican majority in the legislature. Looking back at what was a momentous win for the people of Arizona, for taxpayers, especially in Arizona, what were the keys that allowed you to have the kind of unity within your party to get something that big and frankly that tough? There's a lot of moving parts on a tax reform and tax cut bill like that. I remember at the federal level in 2017, it was a very similar situation. But looking back, and maybe for other states to take cues from who are in a similar situation where one party, in this case the Democrats, say, no, we're going to have a blanket opposition to this. You've got a narrow majority. What were the keys to getting something that big and that difficult still accomplished in Arizona?
Thanks, Tim, for pointing that out. You're right. In Arizona, for all the success we've had with conservative policies, we only have a 1-seat majority in our House and a 1-seat majority in our Senate. So we can't afford to lose one person. And yes, the Democrats were actively working against this tax bill. They really wanted to torpedo it. They were nearly successful. So I want to give a real shout out to my state legislature. I want to give a shout out to my leadership in that legislature, Speaker Rusty Bowers, Senate President Karen Fann, J.D. Mesnard was a real leader on this tax reform. Ben Toma was a leader, T.J. Shope, and it took till nearly midnight on June 30th, and the government shuts down on July 1st, and then really all bets are off, because you just politically that very rarely, if ever, works for the conservative in the room. The media finds a way. While I think they were aligned with the left in trying to crater this tax package, they would have loved to have a headline that, Ducey and conservatives shut down government for tax cut, but we didn't get there. So, it was a lot of reaching out, a lot of visits, a lot of conversations, a lot of coalition building. I want to say thank you to Americans for Prosperity. I want to say to Grover Norquist and his organization. One appeal I made to everybody in the legislature is we've got a lot to fight about right now. I think we're definitely seeing some changes that are happening within our party. Of course, there are changes in the other party, but there's been one issue that has united Republicans our entire adult lifetime, if not longer, and that is lower taxes. That is that we let the citizen keep more of the money that they earned. And I think that rang true with everyone. It was a call to principle and to fundamentals, and also that we would never have this opportunity to take what could have been Arizona 8% top tier tax rate down to 2.5% across the board flat tax. We were able to do that because the Republicans in the legislature came together, and I and the people of Arizona will be forever grateful.
Wonderful. I think I want to wrap kind of before I turn it over to Tim. One of the things that, you look at this last session, Governor, and it was so successful. It's almost hard to kind of look at how do we do better? What's on the horizon for Arizona? And while you're right that there is plenty going on in the country in which we have to fight for, and Americans and Arizonans need to continue to engage in the efforts here in Arizona and across the country, because it's just so critical right now in our country. That said, the future is bright for Arizona. How do we make that shining star even brighter moving forward?
Well, yes, Stephen, I agree. I said to my team here, looking at the state revenues that are coming in post legislative session, did we go far enough? I mean, our economy is booming right now. People are flocking to our state. Per capita income growth is rising. Home values are rising. So growth is a gift, but it's also a responsibility, and it's a double-edged sword. We want to make sure we keep Arizona, but we do have this session next year. I think we're on offense. We're going to have great policies that we can put forward. The best thing you can do, everybody wants to talk about the election cycle, and I know as much as anyone that elections have consequences, but you want to run on a record of accomplishment and achievement, or if you're a newcomer, you want to run on an agenda of what you want to get done. To think that we presented this agenda in 2014, we've been able to check off so much of it to date, but there is more to do. I don't think the work of public policy is ever done to give the citizens more freedom around how to live their life, how to build and scale their business, and how to educate their children. And I've said this a couple times, but I think it's important people know that we're going to do everything we can as we navigate out whatever remains on this pandemic. But we have a charge to help our citizens. And I think the education issue is the real opportunity across the country. If you look at so many of the issues and problems that we're having today, you can trace them back to what's happening in our public district schools. So this idea of choice, of putting parents in charge and giving them the flexibility with their dollars and letting their natural skills around being good consumers for their children will go a long way to fix this. You know, governors are very collaborative, they're very collegial, but at the end of the day, we're very competitive. I want more people coming to Arizona, just like Greg Abbott wants more people going to Texas. We're each trying to lower our taxes, brag about the good stuff that's happening for our citizens at the state level. I'd like to see that same kind of competitiveness around educational choice and make sure that our children are learning something of value around reading, communication, analyzing as they walk across a stage in the spring every year, so that they can go out, whether they want to pursue a vocational pursuit, go on to community college or the military, or go into traditional college or university. They should have those options. They should be seen as equal options for our kids, because we need those kind of careers along the way. And then I want to see schools that are actually reinforcing what children are learning at home in terms of value and love of our country and opportunity that's provided in our economic system. You don't get this anywhere else on the face of the earth, and that should be reinforced across the formative years of our kids in school with the use of your and our citizens' tax dollars.
Well said. Governor Doug Ducey from Arizona, one of the very best in this entire country, and we're honored to work with you, Governor, and with AFP in Arizona. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope this gives you some heart, some encouragement. I know it's tough right now looking at Washington, D.C. and what Speaker Pelosi and Schumer and the president unfortunately want to do with this $3.5 trillion lurch toward socialism, bigger top-down government coming out of Washington. And we're fighting that. I'm in Utah right now. I'll be with Senator Mike Lee at a big rally in about 3.5 hours now tonight on this effort, on this issue. But just know that there are good things happening in this country too. We pointed out Governor Ducey in Arizona. We could also talk about Florida and Texas and Iowa and so many other good states where we've got governors doing the right thing with AFP supporting them. So take heart, keep working and fighting. Let's make sure we meet what is a big moment for this great nation of ours. Thank you, everyone.